Hey, everybody, it's Ellen Lewis from Crazy for You. Thanks so much for joining me. So, tonight I want to talk about two things. First, I want to talk about florals for fall, and I want to talk about the new collection by Kaffe Fassett for Rowan that is all about florals for fall. It's called Say It with Flowers. It's a beautiful book, and we'll be looking at the designs from it. But I wanted to start with just, kind of a little recap on Kaffe Fassett and who he is and why this all kind of matters. Hi, Gwen. Nice to see you. So, tell me if you know who Kaffe Fassett is, if you have any experience with his work, if you've ever knitted anything or seen anything knit from one of his designs. So I'm just trying to get a sense of what your exposure to Kaffe Fassett is. So for me, I was first exposed to his work in 1989, right after I had started knitting, and I was just overwhelmed, completely blown away. My mother bought me a copy of his first book, Glorious Knits, and it kind of opened my eyes to a whole new way of thinking about knitting. So certainly he was not the first person in the world to do color knitting, of course, but for me, he was the first person who really talked about color knitting as a thing that you could do, a way to express yourself artistically with knitting rather than following somebody else's patterns. And he kind of made it accessible for me. And I think probably for a whole generation of knitters. Tell me if that's you. Hey, Eveline. Hey, Barbara. Nice to see you. Hey, Valerie, Sandy. Oh my goodness, so nice to see you. All right. So is that a Kaffe Fassett one, Valerie? Dolores, it probably is, or you wouldn't have mentioned it, right? Anyway, so who is Kaffe Fassett? If you're not familiar with him, Kaffe Fassett is an artist, a painter, and a textile artist. So a painter, needlepoint, knitting, mosaics, quilting, sketching, just all of the art. So he's just so incredibly talented, and it just bubbles up through all the different media. Everybody thinks he's British, but he's kind of an expat. He really was actually born in California and grew up there, and his whole family. So he comes from a family of artists. So it's obviously natural that he would be so incredibly talented. But again, it's just his way of working with color is magical, and he approaches knitting with color the way he does painting. So there's all this gradient, this smoothing of color. So lots and lots of color, and it's just very exuberant. So very happy. There's nothing controlled, or there are no rules to be followed. Everybody, when you think about fair isle knitting, you think, okay, well, you can only have 2 colors in a row, and you can only have so many colors on this. All those rules just go out the window when you're talking about a Kaffe Fassett design, as we will look at together. Hey, Rita. Hey, Terry. Oh, Valerie. So Valerie's working on a Kaffe Fassett thing. So I would love to see that when that's done, or, in progress or anything. So what I did, I guess it's sort of a happy accident this season, because one of the things that makes Kaffe's work so remarkable is his use of flower motifs, so floral motifs. So when you think of his stuff, oftentimes you think of geometrics and those works that he did with the tumbling blocks, or the the squares, the crosses, or the little teeth that he does. But for me, what's always stood out is his floral motifs. I guess that's because that's what I'm most drawn to. And this season, for him to put out the book Say It with Flowers, which is obviously all floral motif, kind of was this happy accident, because flowers for fall is a huge trend, not just in knitwear, but in patterns and all that kind of stuff. So I thought, well, let's look at this. So let's look at together, what Kaffe has done for this particular season's collection and what we're seeing on the runway and in ready to wear, high-end ready to wear. So anyway, so I put together a little presentation for you that I wanted to share with you. And if there's anything in there that you want to see more of, let me know. I can go back and we can chat about it. But I just think it's so wonderful that we have a collection in the Rowan line that correlates so perfectly to what we're seeing in the trend right now. Now, are flowers for fall brand new? No, of course not. In fact, I thought it was kind of funny. I have this book from 1989 because, of course, I do. And this is from the early days of Rowan, and they had a collaboration with Liberty Wool. And these are some of the designs that Kaffe Fassett did for that collection for Rowan back those many years ago. I don't even like to think how many years ago 1989 was, some 30 years. But aren't they pretty? And you'll notice this one, this mosaic motif, again, in the collection that I'm going to share with you. So let's get started. I'm going to share my screen and okay, so florals for fall with Kaffe Fassett. So this is just, I wanted to share with you the one of the displays or one of the spreads from his first book that was so inspiring to me. This particular little sweater down here, it's knit side to side, and he talks about how you just change colors when you want to. You use whatever yarns you want. And you don't worry about, weaving in your ends right there. In his book, he taught about how to weave in your ends as you go. And just this, I guess the only word is really exuberant, this really super playful way to work with color. And look at I call these color sketches, all the color sketches he did, all the swatches, and just this play of color and pattern. I just found that so wonderful and amazing in my young knitting life. And if you read my newsletter this week, then you know that I think this was part of the reason that I decided I wanted to own a yarn store, so that I could have an endless supply of yarn and colors just to play with. So that's just simple stripes. And then this, from that same book, this is the Persian poppy motif. And I fell absolutely passionately and madly in love with this blue and pink and purple and lavender peplum jacket with, you can see that it's very 1980s with those puff sleeves. But this one here, super timeless, even though that's 30 years old, it's incredibly timeless. And I would absolutely wear that today. So I think that kind of speaks to the nature of his work. So let's look at what we're seeing on the runway. So these are both drawn from current collections. I don't remember exactly who they were, but definitely designers. I probably have it written. I think this one might be Anna Sui. But kind of to share with you the effect of this whole floral motif. And then here is a stack of the sweaters from the Say It With Flowers collection. So I just thought that was kind of interesting that you have such similar looks and feel in the colors and the motifs. Here, this jacket with the black and the red, this is by Kate Spade. Here's a black and red floral dress from Marnie. And then this beautiful rose motif from Dries van Noten. So if you look at that and then you flip over to this design from the Say It With Flowers collection, I love that because you have the same red on black. It's clearly very modern, updated for the season, just the palette. Even though it's the same flower motif, it somehow looks right now with the black and the red, I think. Here again, this also from Dries van Noten, that flower in these kind of subtle, not very different tones, very similar to the cover design from the magazine the collection, Say It With Flowers. And over here we have 3 different sweater coats, two from Anthropology, one from Dynasty Forever. Gwen, you will recognize this as being from the, I want to say this is from the Sundance catalog, but very good looking. And then here is the image of that very similar kind of look. You know, I think the colors are similar. The fact that it's a floral sweater coat, you know, makes it very current, very attractive. You'll notice in the background, this whole collection was photographed at Kaffe's home, I think in Great Britain. So you can see how very, very vivid everything is and how it's all completely decorated with playful and beautiful colors. So yeah, so let's take a look now at some of the different designs from the collection and just kind of go through and talk about what they are. All right, so this is that big flower jacket. This is knit at a nice easy gauge of 18 stitches over 4 inches because you're using felted tweed held double. Every design in this collection is using felted tweed. And this one, again, as I said, is felted tweed held double, very oversized. You get 15 to 17 inches of positive ease. This is a drop-shouldered V-necked cardigan. It is worked flat in pieces and seamed, and it uses 5 colors. And they do a really nice job with the charting so that the entire garment is charted, and you don't have to worry about kind of repeating that. It shows you where everything is supposed to be. So that makes it easy. Now, if you don't like to work color work on the wrong side, I suppose that you could work this flat and stick it, but I will tell you that it is done both with intarsia and stranded technique. So let's talk about how that works. This is that Chinese rose jacket that I showed you where she was reclining on the divan earlier. This is just what it looks like, you know, as a coat. I think it's beautiful. Also, lots and lots of positive ease. Again, felted tweed held double. 14 different colors on this. So the sections, let me go back to this one. So the sections here where your colors are close together, these are going to be stranded, but the large blocks of section in between the motif are worked in tarsia. So that's kind of unusual. And again, that's what I was talking about when I was saying that the rules just sort of go out the window with him. I mean, no self-respecting Fair Isle knitter would combine intarsia and stranding, would they? Well, no, but that's not who Kaffe Fassett is. And that's not how his garments are designed or worked. But isn't this pretty? And I love the way the colors are just so gradually changed in there. It gives it such an incredible richness and it makes it look very painterly. This is the pink rose stole. This is worked with felted tweed single, gauge of 24, generously sized garment, 78 inches long and 19 inches wide. So just beautiful. And I think if you wanted to, you could make it shorter and seam it and have a beautiful, simple poncho. But this is a nice 2-color motif. I'm not going to tell you that any of the motifs in this collection are easy to knit because they aren't. They are not symmetrical. They are not geometric. So they're definitely more challenging to knit as far as intarsia and stranding. But you know, if you like that kind of stuff and you're interested in doing that, I think it would be a really great, great challenge. This one also beautiful. I want to say this has, yeah, also 17 colors. So again, held single, a fine gauge. It has 2 sides. So you've got this whole dangling flowers side, and then the other side is simply striped. So if you wanted to do just the stripes, that's something that you absolutely could do. Here's their fall flower cardigan. Really soft colors, reminiscent of that first one that I showed you with those soft kind of blues and purples and aquas. So I think that's really pretty. Less ease on this. It's a set-in sleeve garment, again in tarsia and stranded. This uses 20 colors of the felted tweed held single, and it's worked at a gauge of 23 stitches. This is the flower mosaic jacket that you will remember from this one that I showed you kind of at the very beginning. Very similar, but again, this is a set-in sleeve, much less ease. This is meant to fit more closely, worked flat and seamed, intarsia and stranded, 11 colors. So Meredith says, that's the one I like. Is it the flower mosaic jacket or is it the fall flower cardigan that you like? Meredith, tell me in the comments. Anybody have a favorite so far? Another thing I like about this, and I'll probably talk about it in another episode, is this combines kind of another trend for the fall, which is this pop of neon. You know, the acid green and the hot pink against a neutral background is something that we're seeing a lot this season. Tropical brocade. This is what is the name of this? I want to say it's a carnation, Turkish carnation motif, which is very pretty. Again, the colors smoothly transition up from one to the next. It looks like almost a gradient yarn, but it's not. It's it's multiple colors, but limited colors here, 7 colors. A lot of positive ease, drop shoulder. Again, a nice easy gauge of 18 stitches over 4 inches. Okay, so Meredith likes the dangling scarf with a stripe on one side and the flowers on the other. That's really pretty, isn't it? So I have most of these kitted up on the website if you are interested. I like this. I think this is pretty. I think the colors are really nice and soft. Tudor Rose. You have a mix of that kind of Persian poppy motif and some of this other stuff that's kind of reminds me of some of his painted pottery inspiration that he has. So very pretty, very close fit. So this has between one inch of negative ease and an inch of positive ease. So this is intended to fit very closely. It is worked flat in 8 colors. I like how the black and white effect, it's actually 2 shades of gray, make that floral motif kind of pop. And you could play with that if you wanted to. There are other colors you could do. You could do that in red and pink, or you could do it in blue and purple. Very pretty. But what strikes me on this is this corrugated ribbing. I think that's really nice and pretty. Also want to point out that with this collection, like all of the Rowan collections this season, they're very size inclusive. They go from 28 to, I want to say, 60-inch bust. So I think that's nice. Both in the sizing, 62-inch bust, both in the sizing and in the models that are the model that's showing this. So I think it demonstrates how attractive it can be on a variety of body sizes and shapes. If you are not into the flowers, okay, but you still like those floral colors and you want to try something playing with colors, I love this. So much easier, but you still get to play with those sort of shaded tones. Do you see what I'm saying? So this is basically a gray sweater with a very Kaffe Fassett stripe motif. If you look closely, you can see that each of those stripes is 2 rows of 2 different colors. So it gives it an additional dimension. I think that's just lovely. This is a set-in sleeve. This is a very classic shape. This is not from the Say It With Flowers collection, but from the winter vintage collection from last year. And the patterns are also available on Ravelry. And I do have this garment kitted up on the website. I love this. I think this is just a nice way to dip your toe into playing with the colors. Um, like Kaffe was saying, just get your colors and play with them. I once heard him interviewed for, I think was Vogue Knitting, and he talked about how he teaches people to just swatch and to make a beautiful mess and to feel comfortable, just combining colors and not worrying too much about it and not expecting it to be perfect, but just, really loving it and playing with it and having a fun time kind of accessing your inner artist. A lot of times we don't think of ourselves as artistic when we're knitting because, we're following a pattern or whatever. But I don't think that's true. I think knitting is absolutely artistic, and especially if you allow yourself to kind of play with the colors. Every time you change colors in a pattern and don't knit the color that it's shown in, that's an artistic choice that you're making. So I think all knitters are artists in a way, and giving yourself, the freedom to play with the colors is a really great way to access that. So this is an easy way to get into that. I like it because it has a set-in sleeve. I like that. I personally would probably make that a turtleneck, which wouldn't be very hard to do, but very pretty. And as far as a hand-knit wardrobe goes, I think this would definitely be a basic that you would reach for again and again, because those colors in there mean that it's going to go with all kinds of things. And this set-in sleeve means that you can layer it. So another piece from that collection that I like very much is this one, Shaded Diamonds. Again, felted tweed held single. If you look at those diamonds, you'll see that he's done his magic working, a block of this and then alternating rows to get that shading to work really nicely. This is done with the intarsia technique. It's an easy way to dip your toe into intarsia. Super easy. This particular one is done with 16 colors of felted tweed held singly at a gauge of 24 over 4 inches. I will tell you a little secret. It's not really a secret. You probably already know, but Rowan this season has introduced a gorgeous yarn called Felted Tweed Colors. And that is its own little gradient. It's felted tweed in a gradient. And I think there are 6 or 8 colorways. And you could absolutely use those gradients in here. And then you wouldn't have to worry about changing the colors within a diamond. And that would be really, really beautiful. And next week, I'm going to be presenting that yarn and showcasing it with the colors and the designs specifically for felted tweed colors. But never forget that you could substitute felted tweed colors for any of these painterly kind of Kaffe Fassett designs that I've shared with you. So I'm glad you like it, Mary. Terry, yeah, Colors in the Mist. Isn't that pretty? I think that's just beautiful. And that would be so much fun to knit. So I'm interested in hearing if you have any favorites or, if there's anything that you want to see again, or if you have any questions about any of the designs, I would be happy to go over that with you. They do take a lot of yarn because in some instances, you might only be using a little bit of it. So if you have a friend who also wants to make it with you, you could get the yarn and you could maybe share. I think most of the designs take, probably around for the contrasting colors. It could be more than a ball. We would have to look at the pattern to see as you go up in size, those that need an additional skein. But I would be happy to work with you if you wanted to work with a friend and figure out which ones you needed. You could share a skein of and which ones you needed your whole one. So anyway, I love Kaffe Fassett. I love this new collection. This is what the book looks like. We have all of the colors in stock, and we have the book in stock. And if you happen in the shop, I have a beautiful display at the front for this that shows all of the Kaffe Fassett colors. For this book, Rowan allowed Kaffe to choose his own palette. So there's the traditional felted tweed palette, and then there is this extra set of colors that Kaffe has added to the palette this year for this particular collection. So I think that makes it really extra special. And if you wanted to just come in, pick some gray, pick some colors that appeal to you, and just make your own beautiful striped scarf, I think that would be a really wonderful way to, just sort of tap into your artistic self. So anyway, that's what I have for you tonight, and I'm glad that you joined me, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, keep knitting and create something beautiful. Have a good evening. Well, before I go, I want to answer Patty's question. Sorry. Yes, that would be lovely, Patty. That would be absolutely beautiful. And you have those colors. So, yeah. So one of the things I think I said I was going to be done, but I'm not. Anyway, if you happen to have any Kaffe Fassett project on the mind and you buy the colors for it and you have a bunch left over, think about those leftover colors or those extra colors as a palette you can use to experiment with. So you've made your thing and you have those leftover colors. I think it's okay. You don't have to use everything up in that project. It's a good thing to have those extra colors left over that you can play with and mix and match and just sort of go wild. So anyway, that's my PS on that. Okay, now I really am going to go. Have a lovely evening. Good night.